Yeah, this is Anna, SantaFe101.com. My guest today is Senator Liz Stefanics. Liz, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, terrific. Well, thank you so much. And I know that, the New Mexico legislative session, it was a 60-day session. It was a long one this time. And then I know you went into a special session. So a lot of exciting things took place this year. And so I wanted to kind of go through those with you. So you are District 39, is that correct?
I am District 39, and sadly to say, I don't represent parts of Santa Fe City, but I do live in Santa Fe County, in the southern part of the county, between the little towns of Cerrillos and Galisteo. So I'm down here in the county, and my district covers San Miguel, parts of Santa Fe County, Torrance County, a tiny bit of Bernalillo in the mountains, Valencia County and the Rio communities, and quite a bit of Lincoln County.
And what's a big city in Lincoln County?
Ruidoso, Capitan, Carrizozo,
okay, so
Corona. They're pretty small. Ruidoso is the largest.
Okay, good. So let's talk about, I guess you were mentioning before I hit the record button that you've been working on since 1995 on a bill that it sounds like it's very dear to you. So let's talk about that important bill that you actually were instrumental in finally getting it passed.
Okay, that is the End of Life Options Bill. And in 1995, I was in the state Senate from only one term, 1993 to 1996, and then I lost re-election. But during that term, a couple from Los Alamos County, at that time, one of my 6 counties was Los Alamos County. So they came to me, and the husband was a vice president of a bank, and he had a degenerative disease. And the husband and the wife asked me if I would consider carrying this bill. And that time, the group, the national group that was really working on this issue was called the Hemlock Society. And they tried to provide ways for people to end their life if they really thought they needed to. Well, society has evolved since then, and we now have a national group called Compassion and Choices. And the whole intent is to work with other states and work with a national model to allow individuals who have terminal illnesses to request assistance, not a doctor-assisted suicide, but to request medical pharmaceuticals to end their life. Now, there's all kinds of securities built into this bill. First of all, a person does have to have a terminal illness with a 6-month diagnosis. So if you're in hospice, you qualify. But if you're not in hospice, you would need to go to a doctor, and usually it's your own doctor. Or in our state, we also allowed nurse practitioners and physicians' assistants to be part of this, because we required 2 healthcare providers to certify that the person is within 6 months of the end of their life. So it's not for my feeling bad today because I have a lot of arthritis or I have a lung problem. It's when a physician says, Liz, you have 6 months left to live. Your cancer has spread. Your other illnesses are taking over your body. And that's when a person can start talking to a healthcare provider about this. So taking and going through 2 healthcare providers usually takes a little bit of time. So we're not talking about overnight making a request and receiving the information, but I would say within a month to 2 months, a person could go through both healthcare providers, in which at that time they would receive a prescription and for a compounded series of medications to use to end their life. Now, after you receive the prescription, you have a 2-day waiting period. And at that time, you can then take it to a pharmacist. Now, there will only be some pharmacists in our state who even agree to do this, because a lot of people are going to go, wow, are we sure we really want to get into the life and death decision making. But I want to assure you and your listeners that this is about a person's individual choice. And what I said in all of my testimony, my parents were devout Catholics. They would never have chosen something like this for the end of their life. But I or the next generation might decide that, yes, it's time to not just end my suffering, but to end the suffering of those around me. We had a dear friend who lived with us for less than a year, and she had stage 4 uterine cancer. So we knew her when maybe it was stage 2 or 3. She had her first surgeries, then she went through chemo, she went through radiation. And when it kept progressing through her body, she couldn't live alone. So we invited her to come live in our house. And she might not have chosen this either, and didn't have that opportunity anyway. But by the time she died, she had to have several organs removed from her body, a woman's female body, and sewn up. And it was in order to reduce the pain, the suffering, the excretions that were going to occur during her illness. Now, if this bill had been in place, she would have had the option. Nobody would have ever made her do anything, but she would have had the option to talk to her healthcare provider, and it was an oncologist, and say, do I have any time to live, any kind of quality life? What's going to happen to me? What's my pain level? How is my body going to deteriorate? What's going to happen in terms of people having to take care of me? And then making the decision herself whether to ask to acquire the medication. Now, anybody who goes through the process to ask for the medication has to go through 2 healthcare professionals. Once they get the prescription, they have to wait 2 days before they can go and get it filled. And then they have to be able to administer it themselves.
And are they pills? Is it pill form, or is it?
It can be pill, but it can also be ground up to be put in liquid. It can also be put into a feeding tube. It also can be put into suppository form. So there are different ways that it can be compounded based upon the person's medical condition. But just because a person gets the prescription doesn't mean they have to use the prescription. So in the states that have had this for many years, it's a low percentage of patients who actually get the prescription and use the prescription. And here's what it is doing. It's offering them peace of mind. It's offering them security that when it comes time and I really feel like I have to make this decision, I have that option. But many people die before they choose to do that option, but they have it
you were saying
available.
that some pharmacies might choose not to fill it. Is that because they feel like they have a hand in death or something? They're just not going to do that? That's
correct. And it's, in all of our state laws, we have provisions that if you, as a healthcare provider, and pharmacists are healthcare providers, if you cannot do something morally, you are not required to do so. You can, in good conscience, say, I cannot do this for you. You need to find the next person to do it.
And is that the same with physicians? Are doctors the same way? Are some of the doctors saying,
yes.
But if they're just your regular doctor and they say, you only have 6 months to live, that's not wrong. They're just being honest. They're not saying, yeah, go out and get this medication, but they're just being honest, saying you only have 6 months to live. They're not saying, they're not condoning it, right?
That's correct. And so now what's happening since the bill passed, the bill goes into effect June 18th. After the bill passed, I got a call from somebody I know socially here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, saying, I have X condition, my husband just died, I need to die. I need 24/7 care. There is nobody to take care of me, and I am just deteriorating. And I had to say, I'm sorry, the bill doesn't go into effect until June 18th. I'm sorry, you need a physician who's going to agree with your decision to do this. And if not, we, meaning the group that's part of the End of Life Options Coalition, that's exactly what we're working on right now. We're putting together lists of doctors, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, and pharmacists that in fact would be part of a network to help people. Now, something I didn't mention yet, Anna, is that if a doctor or a healthcare provider believes that I am not of competent mind to make this decision for myself, they can refer me, or they must refer me, to a psychologist to decide if I am of sound mind to make this decision. They want to make sure that people are not being pressured by family members to do this so that they don't have to take care of them. We're trying to, we tried to make sure in this bill that there were lots of protections for the individual, for the healthcare provider. And so a family should never have to go through the route of being accused of leading somebody to death.
And then what about the family when they're actually, when the person does get this medication that's going to end their life, can family members be present, or is it safer to not have anybody around because then they might say, somebody say, you made so-and-so die or something? How does that work?
So the whole process of getting the medication is so secure that by the time I or somebody were going to administer my own drugs, family members can be around because I have jumped through all the hoops to say this is my decision to do this when I want to. And so it's better, in fact, for the person's anxiety to have loved ones around to help them move across into the next world.
What type of medication is it? I mean, what are the component? What is it that does it?
Well, there's several. For example, there's one that you would take about anxiety. Then you are given a drug to take for nauseousness so that you won't take the actual drug and then throw it up. So then you come to the compounded medication that will actually end the life. So it's
what is that medication? I mean, is it like the stuff they give you with animals when you go to your vet with your dog or something? Is that
well, it could be a similar, but it's a people medicine. It's not the animal medicine. So morphine is part of it, but now as we're studying, and I'm not a physician, so what I do have is the National Medical Director of Compassion and Choices did give us examples, and there are only examples of types of medications that would be used. And I'm sorry, I don't have that sheet with me here right now, but I could always get that to you if you want.
And does it make your heart stop? Is that what happens?
It does. Okay. The final set of drugs makes your heart stop.
You know, it sounds like if somebody's really sick with cancer, you know, my mom and dad both died of cancer. I've been with people when they're dying. It's so unfortunate. They're going to have to jump through they're already like dying. They're miserable. And now they have to jump through all these hoops to die. It sounds complicated, but it's great that it passed because it's going to be good for a lot of people, I'm sure, going forward. So kudos to you for sticking with the bill. And that's so 1995 and that's what, over 20 years it took to pass the bill?
And the past few years I've been working very closely with Representative Debbie Armstrong. She's been the sponsor and I've been the co-sponsor, or vice versa. And so this year she was the sponsor. Once it passed the House, I became the sponsor in the Senate, got it through the Senate committees and then through the Senate floor. So we were very lucky, and the governor signed it. And
why do you think it took so long? Is it because New Mexico is such, I would guesstimate that probably close to 70% of the state is probably Catholic. Do you think that's what took so long, because this is a heavily Catholic state, or what? Why did it take so long?
I believe that is one issue. I think another issue is that in 1995, there weren't that many models around the country. There weren't that many states that had implemented such a thing, but now there are over 13 states that either from their Supreme Court decisions or passing laws, they allow this. So we then became part of a group of states. The other issue is in our state, I believe we now have more independent voters and libertarians, and they in fact appreciate the ability to make up their own minds. In the first time, let's see, 4 years ago, when we did it in the Senate, we even had one Republican senator vote for it. And he said, Liz, I know that people want to make up their own minds about this. This time when it passed the Senate, it was a party line vote. Democrats voted for it, Republicans against it, and there were a few Democrats who could not vote for it because of religion.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, I know my parents would have had a religious adversity to this bill. So I understand totally when people say, no, I cannot do this.
Well, that's why it's good. I mean, and it's a choice, but at least there's that option is now available. And, we're already starting to get close to the end of our time, but let's talk a little bit. I know you went into a special session, so we should let everybody know about, cannabis is now going to be legal here in New Mexico. Let's just talk. I know there, I know it's still a ways down the road before it's actually in your local stores, but let's talk a little bit about, because that's been about at least 6 or 7 years in the making, correct?
Yes, it has. It has. And in fact, the bill that we passed really gives the majority of control to the superintendent of regulation and licensing to set up all the rules and standards. And the entire program is supposed to be able to be put into place. That's growing, producing products, having them tested, go to market and into stores by April of 2022. But as of this summer, individuals can start growing their own products for personal use. So that is a portion of the bill that's this summer, right now. Okay. But Superintendent Linda Trujillo of Regulation and Licensing has posted on her website that she's starting to have public hearings on the production, on the growing and the production. Now, we already have rules for medical marijuana. So the question is, are these going to be similar rules, or are they going to be drastically different? Now, Duke Rodriguez, who owns one of the companies, Ultra Health, he believes that there needs to be a very large quantity of plants grown in order for it to become a viable business, profit-making business for companies, and in order to employ many people. Now, part of this push to legalize marijuana or cannabis or THC is, number one, that our money and our tax dollars don't go to surrounding states, Arizona and Colorado. Number two, that we get some tax revenue for New Mexico. Number three, that it creates jobs for the people of the state of New Mexico. Now, if we're talking about commercial markets, we're talking about people working in stores, we're talking about people working in factories, producing the product, we're talking about people working in the fields, growing the product, or in greenhouses. So we're talking about many different stages of jobs, and people are hoping this is going to create some employment here in the state of New Mexico.
Well, I understand Colorado's done really well with it.
They have. And when you look at the amount of tax, now up in Colorado, they have a provision where a city or a county can opt out of selling and growing and producing. So saying Santa Fe County or Santa Fe City could say, no, we're not going to have anything to do with it. We did not put that into our bill. So that meant that those cities and counties in Colorado could not garner any of the state or county or local taxes that are collected when the project is sold. But quite a bit of money has come up in Colorado. They've paved their roads. They're doing, if you've gone up and seen their rail system, they're taking their rail system and spreading it throughout the entire Denver metropolitan area so that people can get in and out to work quickly and not clog up the roads. They're investing in renewable energy. They have a healthcare system that's really pretty cool. It offers a lot of opportunities for free and low sliding scale healthcare for people at beautiful clinics and hospitals throughout the state.
And they've been at it, what, about 5 years now?
I'm sorry, I can't tell you that. Maybe 5 years, maybe a little longer.
Okay, so so basically it's still going to be some time before New Mexico is going to start to reap the benefits or see the benefits of now having legalized marijuana here. So even though it's going to start maybe being up and running April of 2022, it could be 2024, but we start seeing some of the positive effects.
Right. I think that people coming in, especially from Texas, where they don't have any medical marijuana or the marijuana, they're going to come, and they're going to come as soon as it's available. But I think that we will see.
They come anyway. All of Texas is here. They're coming anyway. They don't need marijuana. They just love Santa Fe. So let me ask you too. I know we are out of time, but just really quickly, let's talk about that solar bill that you had a hand in too, because that's another very progressive thing for our state. So quickly, tell me about the solar bill.
Okay, community solar allows those households who cannot afford solar or who live in condominiums or apartments or houses that are close together to subscribe to a community solar project so that they in fact can get the benefits of lowering their electricity bill. And we have passed this bill. About 90 people worked with me for 6 months coming up with a bill, and it took a lot of time, and all of these people who were working on it were so dedicated. And we had everybody from the utilities to the electric co-ops to the Sierra Club to Vote Solar to advocacy groups to individuals who said this is important for New Mexico. And it passed, and right now the Public Regulation Commission is working on those regulations. And what's going to happen is when an entity, let's say Santa Fe City, and they're very interested in doing this, when Santa Fe City comes up with a project, it can have a small business, and then it can have a lot of residents in a particular area say, I want to buy in. It's going to be like a Netflix subscription. And I'm not pushing Netflix here, but it's like a subscription. You don't have to like come up with $10,000 or $20,000. And you can get out of it as well if you're not happy after 6 months or a year. So then the Public Regulation Commission is going to say, here's all the things you have to do to apply for this permit. Once the PRC approves it, then P&M has to accept the project, which means they have to tie that community solar electricity into their transmission lines.
And I guess P&M's not really happy with that, right?
Well, we had to adjust the community solar bill to make it a little smaller for them to accept it. But in the end, they did accept it.
Well, thank you, P&M. Well, good. So those are three really progressive bills. It's kind of indicative of what's going on here in New Mexico now. Just off the top of your head, is there anything else my viewers need to know about things that are really happening that makes New Mexico a really cool state, besides you and me being here?
Well, you know, we this year finally started taking care of our families with upping the working tax credit, with providing money for small businesses, with helping, you know, during the pandemic, it just was so hard on everybody. And so now we have the opportunity, and we have been putting some financial support into families, into businesses. And I think we're just going to continue to grow in our state.
Oh, good. And so actually looking, there was some positive things came out of the pandemic.
On our behalf, we really needed to take care of the people here, and we did that.
Well, good, terrific. Well, I want to thank you again, Liz Stefanics, District 39, a Democrat. Thank you for sharing your information, and always thank you for your hard work. You know, I know you do a lot for the community, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Anna, for doing this.